What's up, guys? Welcome to my review of I Know What You Did Last Summer, a sequel to the 1997 film that goes by the same name. There are two sequels that already existed before this one, and those are both varying degrees of awful. And I suppose this one does loosely reference them, but it's not necessary that you see them. I feel like this is more of a direct follow-up to that original. And yes, this is one of those horror reboots that uses the same exact title as the original, which we first saw in probably Halloween from 2018. They did it once again with Scream, Candyman, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and many others. And just like a lot of those films, this one blends a new group of younger characters with the aged legacy characters. Before long, the new characters find themselves in a very similar situation to the old characters in the original, so they must seek out these experts for advice. In this case, that is Julie James, played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Ray Bronson, played by Freddie Prinze Jr. The setup for this film, the inciting event, is precisely what you think it's going to be. The lead characters inadvertently cause an accident and flee the scene of the crime instead of helping the victim. 1 year passes and they are now being hunted down by a hook-wielding maniac wearing a slicker. I'm not sure that I've ever seen a slasher want to be a Scream movie as bad as this one does, which is ironic considering the writer of the first Scream, Kevin Williamson, wrote the original I Know What You Did Last Summer before he wrote Scream. So the script for that original is almost a precursor to the whodunit formula that Wes Craven would soon employ in what I consider to be one of the greatest slashers of all time. The thing about Scream is it's in on the joke. It makes fun of itself, but still takes things relatively serious, and you can still watch it as a horror. It is not a comedy. It's a horror film that occasionally winks at the camera in a fun but frightening commentary on the genre. That is not what this is. This feels more like what Scream makes fun of. You can tell that it wants to be a bit self-aware, but in this case, I got more of the impression that they just threw shit at the wall to see what sticks. Totally scattershot. This movie is not in on the joke. It is the joke. A lot of the praise that I've seen thrown at this film mentions the 90s nostalgia. Oh, it recaptures the feeling of that original. And it might do so, at least in a visual sense, and occasionally with bringing the legacy characters in, but it never feels sincere. And as much as people talk about it feeling like a 90s movie, I don't remember ever hearing anything in a 90s movie as cringy as some of the dialogue in this film. I'm trying to come up with an example right now. The best one that I can think of off the top of my head is there's an instance where a character uses the term beta male in a sentence that is so forced and manufactured that you can tell it's written by somebody who thinks this is how people talk in real life, when in actuality, well, it isn't. The kills are definitely a bit bloodier and more grotesque than they were in the original, and I can appreciate that. I like myself a little bit of carnage candy every now and then. But that's faint praise when you consider the fact that the suspense and the art of the chase is severely lacking. You can predict exactly when a character is going to die. The death scenes are largely redundant and lazy. It's heavily reliant on jump scares, and none of them got me because I knew exactly when they were going to occur, right down to the exact second that the camera pans slowly away from a character and then pans back, and what do you know, the fisherman is standing right behind them. And if you don't get me engaged with the characters, I'm not engaged in the story at all, and most of these characters suck. Apologies to those of you who watch a lot of slashers, because this is a fairly common criticism across the entire genre, but the characters are so goddamn stupid. At one point, the killer stalks one of the characters in the main group and writes a message on the wall that says, "You're next." And in the very next scene, he's sitting alone on a balcony with like 6 empty beer bottles sitting next to him. And my first thought is, why am I supposed to give a shit whether you live or die? You're a fucking dumbass. The unfortunate truth is that I was mostly unengaged with the story until the legacy characters showed up, and even they are sorely underutilized. I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that their characters are worth bringing back after a 30-year hiatus or whatever it is, maybe not quite 30 years. Not to go off on a tangent, but there's a quick dream sequence that utilizes some de-aging, which I thought actually looked pretty good, and it was kind of a cool sequence. You can tell they totally shoehorned that sequence in solely to show off that technology. Once again, throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And then the third act comes along and careens off the deep end. There was a certain point around halfway through in which I sat back and I was like, wait a minute, are they going to do this? No, they wouldn't do that. That's too stupid, right? Well, they did it. When we finally get to the classic killer monologue, I actually saw potential for the movie to be about something, but when you're going to take a swing like this movie does in the third act, it can't just come out of the blue. You can't give me this bland, half-assed regurgitation of the original and then suddenly try to make it mean something. So in the end, I Know What You Did Last Summer is lazy, uninspired, that is until the third act, in which it becomes much more interesting but equally stupid. I'm gonna give this film 1.5 stars. That might seem a bit harsh, but there is absolutely nothing about this film that makes me eager to revisit it anytime in the future. It is a poor imitation of something that I already thought just wasn't that good to begin with. So hopefully what you do this summer is not watch this crap, but I always welcome differing opinions, especially, if you're a big fan of slashers, you're probably going to watch this movie regardless of what my take is. So I encourage you guys, if you're super interested, to check it out and let me know down in the comments what you think, if maybe I am being a little harsh on this one. Maybe I've just seen too much of this crap to the point that they really have to work hard to stand out to me. Either way, those are my thoughts. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe before you head out. If you want more content like this, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.